Okay, so this is part 2 of the ghost stories. So there's ghost stories, paranormal stories for my family, that kind of thing. So one is about a werewolf that came to visit my grandfather. So my grandparents were medicine people, and a lot of people traveled from all over the States and all over Canada to go and meet with my grandparents for healing and that kind of thing. So at one point, when they were still living over, they're at like the schoolhouse. This would have been in the 60s, 70s. They, my grandfather slept in what we call the blue bedroom. And he had his bedroom window open at the time. And he's sleeping. And the next thing he could feel like something, like hands or something on his chest. And then, so he brought up his hands, and then he could feel like fur, and when he looked, it was he said it looked like a werewolf. This thing came to him apparently wanting help, and my grandfather was unable to help him, and he told him that he had to go back to his own people. This was a person that I guess was of pure European descent, and my grandfather said to this entity, you need to go back to your own people. You need to find somebody amongst your own people that can help you. I don't have the medicine to help you with this. I guess it was, this person was, I don't know, something happened, and they changed into whatever this thing was, and for whatever reason they needed help. Moving into shape shifting and stuff, we do have people, we do, like my grandfather had a cousin who was a shapeshifter. He would turn into a black dog. Like we have stuff like that in our own culture where, you know, people can turn into animals or certain things, like maybe like big boulders or rocks, that kind of thing, trees. Some people were born with that natural ability and that natural gift, and then some people acquired the ability to do that using certain medicines and rituals and that kind of thing. So we don't believe that it's just like astral projection shape shifting, which I know is really popular amongst like kind of the new age kind of group. They think, well, you know, it was an astral shift or whatever. We really believe that people can legitimately be shapeshifters. So anyway, but for whatever reason, my grandfather was unable to help the gentleman that came to him, and so he sent that person away, and he called it a werewolf. So there's that. What else was there? Oh, I have the oldest cousin in my generation. His name was Danny. So we have these things, and I've done videos years ago about Pokaks. And they look like, kind of like, can you know, like the alien depictions of aliens that are like, you know, 3-4 feet tall, and they're gray, and they got the big almond shaped eyes, and they've got no hair, and that kind of thing. Our Pokaks look like that. They look very much like that. They look like little tiny skeletons, basically, with gray skin that's wrapped around them very tight, and they've got no hair, and they got kind of the big almond shape. They could be aliens. We just call them Pokaks. I don't know. Anyway, they are usually considered to be bad. However, some can be beneficial and some can be benevolent, and they can help people. But some of them can't. So anyway, or they don't. They are also known for traveling during storms, and if you leave your horses or dogs outside, or, you know, cattle outside, that kind of thing, they've been known to torment animals at the same time, especially during storms. And you'll hear them before they even get to your farm. It sounds like a loud shout and like a clap or something, and they love traveling during storms, these Pokaks. So anyway, Danny was at the farm. He was by himself, and he could hear these Pokaks outside, and we believe that all you need is like about a tablespoon or two of lard, and you throw that into a fire, and we always had like a wood stove. Throw that in, and for whatever reason, Pawkuks hate the smell of burning fat. They hate the smell of lard thrown into a fire. So my cousin was scared. So instead of just throwing like maybe a tablespoon or two of the lard into the wood stove, he threw a whole pound of lard into the wood stove to chase away the Pawkuk. So that was kind of a comical story about a Pawkuk and scaring one of my cousins. How are we for time? We are at 5 minutes. Gosh, there's so many. There's stories about Wendigos. There's a few stories actually about Wendigos. Now, it's not the same as what you see on like the movie, like, or TV shows like Charmed or like Supernatural, where they have like Wendigos, and it's not quite like that. And different tribes will have maybe different stories about them. They say that Wendigos originated a long time ago when people were starving and they didn't have enough food during the winter, and they started to eat ice and snow. That's very dangerous, and it's taboo to eat ice and to eat snow, especially yellow snow. But no, seriously, it was very taboo. You never should eat ice and or try to eat snow. So what happened is people were starving in this one tribe. They were starving. They started eating ice and snow, and then because of that, they started eating their lips, like chewing on their lips, their mouths would get numb, what have you. They started eating their lips, and then they start to develop a craving for human flesh, and then they became cannibals, and they got like kind of like the superhuman type of strength and that kind of thing. So that's what they say is the actual origin of Wendigos. Now different tribes might have different origin stories, but that is the one that I grew up being told. And then it is also believed you can turn somebody into a Wendigo. You kind of make them lose their mind, and you can turn them into something like that. And once they get turned into that, they can never like come back from that. They can never be healed or doctored from that. It's not a good thing. So there are bad medicine people who have turned people into Wendigos, and yeah, so there's that. Sometimes Wendigos might come to you during your dream time. That's happened to me a couple times as well. My mom and her second husband had an experience with one at their farm, like at his farm, and it was huge. They had a great big ranch style house, and it was a very like long house, and this Wendigo was on their roof and only took like 7 steps to cross their roof. So that just gives you an idea of like how large this thing was, because there's no way a human being of average size could possibly cross that house in 7 steps. Like it was just too long of a house. Like there's no way. So yeah, things like that have happened in our family. You don't want to run into one of them at all. What else? My aunt, bless her soul, she was my most gentle aunt. Very soft spoken, very kind. Just a real lovely, gentle human being. Very naive too. So there's a story about her catching a ride with the devil. And some people believe in devils and demons and that kind of thing. So she was hitchhiking. This is back in like the 50s or 60s. She was going from the farm into town, and it was common back then for people to hitchhike. And so this big fancy black car pulls up, and it was very flashy and brand new. And so she gets in, and this guy was like dressed in a suit and very prim and proper and very well to do. And so they're talking and making small talk, and she said like the inside of the car was like all like red, um, like interior was all red, and it was a very fancy car. And so she was talking with this entity, this thing, and then she started thinking about some of the stories she heard about a man that'd be all in black or showing up with a black vehicle, and all this kind of stuff. And then she was trying to brush that out of her head, and then she looked down at his feet. She was trying to be like not too obvious about it. And then she looked down, and he didn't have any feet. He had hooves that were on the gas pedal. He had a hoof on the gas pedal. And then she looked out the window and was thinking, holy shit, I'm riding with the devil. So then he takes her, he drives her into town, and he's being like very polite to her. And so she was making small talk with this entity, and then he asked her if she wanted some money for lunch. And she looked at him, and her mama didn't raise no fool. And she said, sure. And she's like, why, yes, that's very nice of you. Yes, I'm hungry. I'll buy lunch. So he gives her like, I don't know, a few dollars. Like way back in the day, would have bought a lot. So I don't know what he gave her, $5 or something. And she's like, thank you very much. And then she gets out of the vehicle. So that was kind of a funny story, because her family was like, oh my gosh, Auntie, you caught a ride with the devil. And he gave you lunch money? Like, what? Well, I was hungry, and yes, I accepted it. She goes, I'm not going to turn down money if somebody's going to give me money for lunch. So anyway, that was one of the stories that we always got a chuckle out of. Was that one. There was another one too, where it was some natives, and they were drinking and they were partying. And you have to know that with Indigenous people, addictions has been a plague in a lot of our communities for a few generations already, especially with the onset of like residential schools, colonialism, racism, all that kind of stuff, being rounded up and herded onto little plots of land called reserves and all that kind of stuff. Having your traditional way of life stripped from you, your culture, your language, yada yada yada, it has had a huge impact. So unfortunately, there was some folks that they succumbed to addictions like drugs and alcohol. So this story is about there was a house party. It was on one of the reserves, and there was an old man there, and he didn't like being around people that drank, but he was like living I think with his grandkids or something like that. So he had his own little room. But these young people were partying and they were drinking. And then the stranger shows up, and the stranger brought in one bottle of wine. And that party kept going, and they were drinking for hours from that one bottle of wine. And that old man would come, and he observed what was going on, and like people were getting more and more drunk and laughing and partying with this stranger that showed up just out of the blue. Nobody knew who it was, but hey, he's got alcohol, just let him on in, we'll party, sure, bring your alcohol with you. And that's what they done. And then the old man that was there, he saw what was going on, and he noticed that every time they would pour and fill up somebody's cup with this wine, that bottle just stayed at the same like amount. Like the wine never went down. That bottle just stayed full constantly. And then so in Soto, which is Soto is a tribe here in Canada. It's part of the Algonquin tribe, so it's like it's Ojibwe, basically, Plains Ojibwe Indians. Anyway, so in Soto, he told all the people sitting there, he goes, you guys are drinking with the devil. You guys have been drinking here for how many hours on that same bottle of wine? He's filled up your cups how many times, and that bottle has never gone empty. And then, so then all the natives stopped, and then they looked at the stranger, who then started to laugh like a maniac. It was like he understood what they said, and then he got up and he walked out of that house. And then the old man gave all those young people hell. So that was one story I grew up hearing about. Oh, then there's another one where there was my mom, my Auntie Lorena, myself. I'm not sure. Oh, my kids would have been little at the time. And we're out picking rhubarb, wild rhubarb, on one of our neighbors' land. They were like, literally their land was next to ours, but the wild rhubarb grew on their land. So we went over there to pick some wild rhubarb, and we could see the grid road. And then we were picking this, and then my aunt was like, who's that on the road? And then I stopped, and the three of us, like my mom, my Auntie Lorena, and I, we all looked at the road, and we could see this little person, like maybe about 4 or 5 feet tall, no shirt on, dark hair, walking. And we only saw them like really from the waist up. But they were walking like towards like my mom's place, and it was like, who is that? Like, is that some kid? Is somebody lost? Like, there shouldn't be anybody out here kind of thing where we were. So then we go up to the road to follow to see, like, you know, who is this person? Like, what are they doing? And there was like nobody on the road. And then when we looked for the footprints, they were cloven hoof marks. So I don't know, what is that, like they were like a little goat hoof marks heading towards my mom's house. So that was something. My son thinks that was what are they called, a satyr or something like that. Who knows, could have been the god Pan for all I know. I don't know, but yeah, that was interesting. That's something I won't forget. How are we for time? We're at 17 minutes. I think I'll wrap that up for now. There's so many more that maybe I'll do this again some other time. So yeah, just some paranormal ghost stories from our family to yours. And we typically, like I said before in the first video, we typically do share these types of stories when it's wintertime, when it's cold. We tend to gather, you know, maybe light some candles, have some snacks out. We'll sit in the kitchen or in the living room, and we'll just sit around and tell these stories and reminisce about, you know, stories. And then sometimes if you have a visitor that comes and they bring some new ghost stories to, you know, and that's always nice too. Yeah, so anyway, that's some of our oral traditions that we do, and yeah, maybe it's something you might want to try. Anyway, that's it for now. Ciao.